The coffee cup sat in front of me, steaming softly, its scent strangely sharp, almost chemical, beneath the usual warmth of roasted beans. For my new colleague, she laughed, placing it gently on the desk beside my keyboard. Her voice was sweet, airy, the kind that could just as easily be kindness or manipulation. It was her first day at the company, and more importantly, the CEO's niece. Her name was Chloe, 22, confident and far too comfortable considering she'd been in the building for less than 3 hours. She didn't hesitate when she walked in either. She'd made comments, whispered to upper management, and casually dropped the words, "Uncle Richard said I'll be taking over the Harper account soon." That account was mine. I'd built it from scratch over 4 years. Late nights, missed holidays, sleepless deadlines. That account was the reason I was still standing after a messy divorce, and the reason I'd been shortlisted for VP next quarter. So when she handed me that coffee with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, something inside me paused. My name is Amanda. I'm 34, and I've learned, sometimes the hard way, that when someone laughs too loudly at their own generosity, it's usually not generosity at all. I forced a polite smile. How thoughtful. Thank you. But I didn't touch the cup. Instead, I watched her. Her eyes flicked to the mug several times. Quick glances, too quick, almost like she was waiting for me to drink. "I heard you're kind of a legend here." She giggled, waving her freshly manicured hand. "Everyone talks about how hardworking you are. Uncle Richard says you practically run the department." She tilted her head, smiling. "But I guess every era ends eventually, right?" There it was. Not kindness. Competition. Aggressive competition. I let out a light laugh, even though something cold twisted in my stomach. "Eventually," I agreed. She smiled wider, satisfied. After she walked away toward the printer, still humming and scrolling her phone, I stared at the cup again. The smell wasn't right. It reminded me of the time I accidentally left my French press unwashed for days. It had the same metallic acidic undertone. Except this was freshly made. Something wasn't adding up. I moved the cup closer, pretending to admire the foam design. A broken heart. How poetic. And waited. The office was busy, noisy enough that no one noticed when I nudged my chair back or when Chloe returned to her desk, just across from mine, typing dramatically like she had something urgent to prove. I didn't think. I just acted. As I stood to pick up some files, I deliberately brushed her desk with my elbow, sending a pen rolling toward the edge. "Oh, sorry," I murmured. She reached to grab it, and in that half second, her eyes down, her hand extended. I swapped our cups. Clean, quiet, invisible. She didn't notice. She just picked up her pen, brushed her hair behind her ear, and resumed typing with that annoying, self-satisfied smirk my heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe it was intuition. Or maybe it was the years of being underestimated, overlooked, and quietly sabotaged that finally taught me to trust my instincts. Either way, I didn't regret it. Not then. Not now. 30 minutes passed. At first, everything was normal. Then her laughter changed. It became short, shaky, forced. She blinked several times, confused, pressing her fingers to her temples. "Did someone turn up the heat?" she muttered, her voice breathless. No one else felt warm. I watched her skin flush bright red. Neck first, then cheeks. Her hands trembled. She took a shaky breath and reached for her water bottle, but dropped it before unscrewing the cap. "Chloe?" I asked softly, keeping my voice neutral. "Are you okay?" She tried to speak, but the words slurred, her tongue thick, her eyes glassy. Then her knees buckled. She collapsed beside her desk, the office erupting into chaos. Chairs scraping, papers falling, voices rising. Someone yelled for HR, someone else called 911. People panicked. I just stood there, still, silent. Watching the mug she'd made for me trembling on the floor beside her hand, the same mug she confidently handed me. the one she never expected to drink. And in that moment, with sirens echoing in the distance and every pair of eyes darting between her and me, one thought repeated in my mind. She didn't make that coffee to welcome me. She made it to replace me. And now? Now the question wasn't whether she had tried to sabotage me. The question was, how long had this plan been in motion? And who helped her? The paramedics arrived fast, faster than I expected for a Tuesday morning. Chloe was still conscious when they lifted her onto the stretcher, but barely. Her pupils looked unfocused, her hands twitching in small, involuntary jerks. The room was tense. Silent except for the paramedics' hurried instructions and the beeping equipment, I stayed back. Not because I was afraid, but because everyone was already staring. Not at Chloe. At me. Maybe they thought I knew something. Maybe they sensed the shift. The unspoken truth hovering in the air like smoke. Our HR director, Marianne, walked toward me, her heels clicking too loudly against the office floor. "Amanda," she said quietly, "can we talk?" My stomach tightened. I nodded and followed her down the hall into a small conference room. The door closed behind us with a soft but final click. Marianne placed her tablet on the table and folded her hands. "What happened?" A simple question, but her tone wasn't neutral. It was careful, controlled, meaning she already suspected something. I took a slow breath. "She gave me a cup of coffee this morning," I said. She said it was a welcome gesture. "And did you drink it?" I hesitated. Not long, but long enough that Marianne noticed. "No," I answered. "It smelled off, so I didn't." Her brows lifted slightly. "And Chloe drank hers?" "Yes," I said. "She did." Another pause. Another unspoken accusation. Marianne tapped her tablet, scrolling. "This isn't the first incident involving beverages in this company." She stopped scrolling and looked at me. "You're aware of the audit?" I stiffened. Audit. I'd heard whispers, rumors of missing client files, unexplained absences, and oddly timed performance issues. But no one had confirmed anything. "Barely," I admitted. "No one ever officially communicated details." She nodded slowly, as if confirming something to herself. "Chloe joined the company 2 weeks ago," she said. "Not today. Today was just her public introduction." I blinked. 2 weeks? Yes. She was shadowing teams remotely, reviewing confidential files, observing presentations. "Why wasn't I told?" I asked. "Because," her voice lowered, "someone requested she be placed under a non-disclosure observation period." I already knew the answer before she said it. "Your CEO," she confirmed. "Richard?" A bitter taste formed at the back of my tongue. Anger, betrayal, confusion. "So, what does that have to do with this?" I asked. "Because," Marianne said slowly, "this morning wasn't just a coincidence. The timing is too perfect." Her eyes met mine steadily. "You're up for VP next quarter. You hold the biggest account in the company. You survived restructuring that eliminated 5 senior managers. Some people may not like how much influence you've earned." It wasn't paranoia then. It wasn't imagination. It was strategy. And I had been a target. Marianne leaned forward. "Tell me truthfully, Amanda. Did you switch the cups?" The room felt colder. My pulse pounded in my ears. "Yes." She didn't react. Not with surprise, not with judgment. "Why?" "Because," my voice cracked despite myself, "I've had people smile to my face and destroy me quietly behind closed doors. My ex-husband, my old supervisor. People who pretended to support me while waiting for the first chance to replace me." I steadied my breathing. And something about her smile told me she wasn't offering welcome. She was offering warning. Marianne sat back, absorbing my words. Then she finally spoke. "The hospital will run toxicology tests. Whatever happens next depends on the results." Before I could respond, the conference room door opened and Richard, our CEO, Chloe's uncle, stepped inside. His face was pale, angry, and strangely unreadable. "Amanda," he said, voice clipped. "We need to talk." I expected fury, accusation, threats. Instead, he dropped into a chair and scrubbed a hand over his face. "She collapsed," he muttered. "They don't know what caused it." I stayed silent. He looked up, studying my expression, maybe hoping for guilt, fear, something he could use. But I only met his gaze. Finally, he leaned forward. "What exactly happened between you two this morning? Not why didn't you stop her? Not how did this occur? But between you two." Meaning, he suspected something deeper. I spoke carefully. "She gave me coffee. I didn't drink it." "And she did," he finished. I nodded. His jaw tightened. Then, to my surprise, he didn't ask another question. Instead, he said something that sent a chill down my spine. "Whatever's going on, whatever she thought she needed to do, someone put that idea in her head. Someone told her you were a threat." His eyes locked on mine. "And I need to know who." Richard didn't wait for me to respond. He stood abruptly and paced to the window, staring out over the parking lot as if searching for answers there. "People don't just poison their coworkers out of nowhere," he muttered. "Someone gave her a story. Someone convinced her you were a problem." His words felt wrong, almost rehearsed, like he already knew pieces he wasn't sharing. I folded my arms. "Richard, did you?" He turned slowly, his expression tightening. Not offended, but caught. "No," he said carefully. "But I may have unintentionally contributed. I told her you were the most ambitious person in the department, that you'd earned every opportunity through grit, not connections. So she saw me as competition. She saw you as a wall she couldn't climb," he corrected quietly. "And some people don't try to climb walls, they try to break them." Silence filled the room. Not the ordinary work silence of keyboards and chatter, but a heavy, suffocating quiet. Finally, Marianne stood. "We should wait for the toxicology report before assuming intent," she said firmly. "Right now, we treat this as a medical emergency, not a crime scene." Richard nodded, though he looked unconvinced. "Go home for the day, Amanda," he said. "We'll call you when we know more." It sounded like a request. It felt like an instruction. I drove home in a strange haze, half numb, half burning with adrenaline. My mind spun with questions. Was this planned? Was it personal? Or was Chloe reckless enough to do something like this without thinking it through? By the time I reached my apartment, my thoughts were a tangled mess. I changed clothes, made tea, and sat on the couch, staring at nothing. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number? "You should have drunk the damn coffee." My breath caught. A second message followed before I could react. "You think switching cups protects you? You think you're smarter than everyone?" My hands trembled. Not from fear, but from recognition. Because I knew that tone sharp. Entitled, "Threat Dressed as Confidence." This wasn't Chloe. This was someone older. Someone who'd been here longer. Someone who had something to lose. I typed quickly, "Me. Who is this?" 3 dots appeared, then vanished, then reappeared. Finally, a reply. "Some of us are tired of you stepping over people to get ahead." Another message. "You're not as untouchable as you think." My chest tightened. Not panicked, but angry. I wasn't someone who clawed my way up by exploiting others. I worked late. I took extra projects. I earned respect the hard way. If someone saw that as stepping over them, it said more about their insecurity than my ambition. Before I could respond, another call came in, this time from the hospital. I answered immediately. "Hello? Ms. Brooks? This is Dr. Patel from St. Mary's. You're listed as an emergency contact for Chloe Bennett." "Emergency contact?" I nearly laughed. "Yes," I said. "What's happening?" The toxicology results came back, he said, voice clipped and serious. We found traces of modafinil in her bloodstream, an extreme dose. My heart stopped. Modafinil. A cognitive enhancer sometimes misused in corporate competition, strong enough to push the body awake and alert, but dangerous when overdosed. She likely didn't intend to ingest that amount, he continued, but whoever prepared the drink used far more than is medically safe. So it wasn't random, I whispered. No, he said. It was deliberate. My grip tightened around the phone. Doctor, is she going to be okay? She's stable for now, he said softly, but she mentioned something earlier, before she lost consciousness. I froze. What did she say? There was a pause, too long to be casual. She kept repeating, it wasn't supposed to be me. He said she would drink it. My blood turned to ice. He, I echoed. She said he? Yes. My pulse hammered. Doctor, did she name him? She tried, he answered. The name started with an R. Richard, my CEO, Chloe's uncle. But I didn't speak that assumption aloud. Not yet. Not without certainty. Thank you, I said quietly. Please let me know if anything changes. When the call ended, I stared at the wall, mind racing. Maybe Richard wasn't the villain, but someone wanted me to believe he was. Or maybe he wasn't the caring mentor he pretended to be. Maybe Chloe wasn't the mastermind, just the pawn. Another buzz. Unknown number. Careful, Amanda curiosity gets people hurt. This time I didn't hesitate. I saved the messages, screenshotted everything. Then I whispered into the empty room. You threatened the wrong woman. Because if someone wanted a war, they were about to get one. I didn't sleep that night. My body was exhausted, but my mind refused to shut down. Every possibility played in loops. Richard plotting, Chloe being manipulated, someone else orchestrating everything from the shadows. By sunrise, I'd made a decision. I wasn't waiting for answers. I was going to get them. When I walked into the office the next morning, the atmosphere was different. Hushed, tense, charged conversations died mid-sentence when I passed. People stared, not with sympathy, but with suspicion, curiosity, and something else. Fear. Marianne was standing near reception, speaking quietly to a man I didn't recognize. Tall, gray suit, official posture. He wasn't HR. He wasn't a lawyer. He looked like someone who investigated federal fraud or corporate sabotage for a living. When their eyes met mine, Marianne motioned for me to follow them to a private office. Inside, the man introduced himself. Michael Grant. Corporate compliance and internal affairs. I've been asked to oversee an internal investigation following yesterday's medical incident. Medical incident, right. That's how companies softened reality. He opened a folder and turned it toward me. Inside was a printout of text messages, the ones I received last night. My blood went cold. So you already know, I said quietly. We traced the messages, he replied. They came from a prepaid number, purchased with cash. No ID. Of course, amateur enough to threaten me, smart enough to stay anonymous. But, he continued, the purchase timestamp matches an employee keycard leaving the building, 2 hours before yesterday's incident. I leaned forward. Whose keycard? He slid a second page toward me. Highlighted name, Richard Bennett. My stomach twisted. Not shock exactly, but confirmation of something I didn't want to believe. But keycards can be borrowed, I said carefully. Or stolen. Michael nodded. We're not jumping to conclusions, but there's more. He tapped the paper. We found a deleted email from Richard to Chloe, restored from the server backup. Another page, another highlight. If she steps out of line, we'll remind her she's not irreplaceable. Push her out of the Henderson account. Make sure she seems overwhelmed. She'll back off. My pulse hammered. Not poison, not murder, but intentional sabotage. He didn't want me hospitalized. He wanted me discredited. And modafinil? I asked. How does that fit? Michael sighed. Based on preliminary evidence, it appears Chloe may not have understood the dosage. Someone told her it would just make you shaky or unfocused, not send her to the hospital. So she thought she was giving me a stimulant before a major client meeting. Yes, enough to make you appear unstable or erratic. Not enough to kill you. I swallowed hard. So Richard didn't want me gone, just ruined. Michael's eyes narrowed slightly. We don't know that yet. But we both knew. This wasn't about health. This was about power. Before I could respond, there was a knock on the door. A nurse from the hospital, red hair, navy scrubs, peeked in. Sorry to interrupt, she said. Are you Amanda Brooks? My chest tightened. Yes. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. I was asked to deliver an update. Chloe woke up around 5 a.m. She's stable, still drowsy but speaking clearly. I nodded, unsure how to feel relief, anger, both. She asked to see you. The nurse continued. Me? Yes. She said you'd understand. I exhaled slowly. Michael stood. I think you should go, but record everything. Do not go alone. You're not just a witness now. You may be a target. The warning settled deep into my bones. The hospital felt colder today. More sterile. More real. Chloe lay in the bed, pale, eyes tired but lucid. When she saw me, she didn't speak. She lifted her hand weakly and motioned for me to close the door. I did. Then she whispered, He told me you were dangerous. I forced my voice to stay steady. Richard? She nodded. He said you were trying to push him out of the company, that you were building alliances behind his back, that if the Henderson deal went through under you, the board would have proof he wasn't needed. Tears welled in her eyes. Not guilt, but humiliation. I thought I was protecting the company, she said. Protecting him. Then she looked at me. Really looked. And then the symptoms started, and I realized he never cared about protecting me. Silence settled between us. Finally, she whispered, He wasn't planning to ruin your career. My breath hitched. He was planning to ruin both of us. Her words echoed in my mind long after I left the hospital room. He wasn't planning to ruin your career. He was planning to ruin both of us. The final puzzle piece clicked into place. Richard didn't care who took the fall. Me, his niece, or both. As long as I lost the Henderson account and didn't become VP, he was satisfied. Fear and anger mixed in my chest, sharp and metallic, like the smell of that coffee cup. But beneath everything was something else. Resolve. It was time to end this. Back at the office, Michael was waiting near the elevators. His expression told me everything before he opened his mouth. We confronted Richard, he said quietly. He denied everything until we showed him the recovered messages and server logs. And? I asked. He asked for a lawyer. Of course he did. We've suspended his access and the board has been informed, he continued, but there's one final matter. He handed me a document. Printed, stamped, notarized a formal statement. As I read the details, my heart slowed. It wasn't just about the attempted sabotage. There was more. Documentation proving Richard redirected company funds to a private consulting shell under Chloe's name money that should have gone to client development and project growth. He wasn't just trying to destroy careers. He was trying to hide financial fraud. And if Chloe hadn't confessed what she did, I might have never found out. When I finished reading, Michael spoke gently. We need a witness willing to testify someone directly affected, someone with evidence and credibility. I exhaled. You're asking me. I'm asking if you're willing. I thought back. Late nights, sacrifices, working twice as hard to earn half as much recognition. All those years, I thought I was competing with circumstance. But I'd been competing with sabotage. I looked up and nodded. Yes, I'm willing. The board meeting that afternoon didn't feel real. 20 executives sat around the polished mahogany table, faces tight, hands folded, eyes sharp with a mixture of fear, interest, and disbelief. Richard sat at the end, arms crossed, jaw clenched. When I entered, whispers rippled through the room. The chairwoman, a woman named Evelyn Shaw, motioned for silence. "Ms. Brooks," she said, voice steady, "you requested to speak." I didn't bring notes. I didn't need them. I told the truth. Not theatrically, not emotionally, just clearly. I explained the coffee, the messages, the hospital call, the recovered emails, the fraud, the plan to discredit me and use Chloe as both shield and scapegoat. I didn't embellish. The facts were damning enough. Richard stiffened, his voice breaking as he finally snapped. "She doesn't understand corporate strategy. She's emotional, reactive." But Evelyn shut him down immediately. "Enough." Silence swallowed the room. Evelyn turned to him, voice colder than anything I'd ever heard. "You knowingly endangered an employee, manipulated another, and risked a multi-million-dollar client. This isn't strategy. It's misconduct." Richard's eyes darted around the room, searching for allies, and finding none. Finally, security entered. And just like that, the man who built his career on intimidation was escorted out. Quiet, shaking, defeated. Chloe wasn't there. She was still recovering, but somehow I knew she would hear every detail. 3 weeks passed. The investigation expanded. Legal consequences followed. Richard was charged with embezzlement, workplace endangerment, and tampering with employee safety. Chloe cooperated fully, providing emails, voice recordings, and timeline details. She wasn't innocent, but she wasn't evil either. She was impressionable. Her greatest mistake was trusting the wrong person. One morning, as I poured myself a real cup of coffee, the safe kind, I got an email from the board. My heart pounded as I opened it. Subject: Henderson renewal plus promotion. My hands shook reading the words. "We are pleased to inform you that effective immediately, you are promoted to Vice President of Client Strategy. The Henderson account has formally renewed under your leadership for another 5-year term." I sat back and let the relief wash over me. Not triumph, not revenge, just peace. That afternoon, I drove to the hospital one last time. Chloe sat up straighter when she saw me. "You got the promotion," she said softly. I did. She nodded, eyes glassy. Not envious, just tired. "I never wanted to be him," she whispered. "I just wanted to make him proud." I exhaled slowly. "Sometimes," I said, "the people we're trying hardest to impress are the ones we should walk away from." She swallowed hard. "And you?" she asked. "What did you want?" I smiled. Not bitter, just honest. "To finally stop defending a place at the table," I said, "and start owning one." She nodded, and I saw something change in her expression, accountability, maybe even growth. As I walked out of the hospital, cool air filling my lungs, I knew one truth clearly. Success isn't about stepping on others. It's about refusing to let anyone bury you. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge is simply surviving and rising anyway. For 10 years, I did the work of 3 people while only being paid for 1. And for most of that time, I ignored the quiet voice in my head whispering, "This isn't normal. This isn't fair." But the moment that finally broke me happened on a rainy Tuesday morning in a conference room that smelled like old coffee and cheap perfume. My boss, Melissa Grant, perfect hair, forced smile, and a blazer that probably cost more than my monthly paycheck, stood at the head of the table with a proud grin. "I'm thrilled to announce," she began, practically glowing, "that Karen Lewis will be joining us as Senior Operations Coordinator." Senior Operations, Coordinator, my position. The job I had been doing for nearly a decade. Unofficially. The room politely clapped. I didn't. Because sitting beside Melissa was Karen, her church friend, someone I'd met twice before when she shadowed us. Someone who, on her second day in the office, asked me with full seriousness, "How do you open a spreadsheet file?" I remember blinking at her, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. Now she sat beside Melissa proudly, smiling like she'd just cured cancer. Melissa continued, "Karen brings fresh energy and exceptional leadership qualities." My heart pounded. My jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. I waited for Melissa to acknowledge my work. 10 years of reports, late nights, fixing crises, running the entire workflow while others clocked out on time. But instead, she turned toward me and said, "Cindy, you'll help train Karen and transition your responsibilities. No complaints, we're all a team." That was the moment something inside me shifted. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't swallow it like I always did. Instead, I stood up. Calm. Almost detached. Like I wasn't even fully in my body. From my bag, I pulled out the envelope I had written 3 months earlier. The one I never had the courage to hand over. I placed it gently on the table. Melissa frowned. "What's that?" "My resignation," I said. My voice wasn't shaky. It was steady. Cold. Final. Effective immediately. And congratulations to Karen. Karen's smile collapsed. Melissa froze, then laughed. One of those sharp, condescending, "you're joking" laughs. "No," she said, shaking her head. "You're not resigning, sit down." "I already did the work of 3 people," I replied. "I'm not training a 4th. Her face twisted. The room went silent. "You don't get to decide when you leave," she snapped. I picked up my bag. "Actually, I do." Melissa slammed her hand on the table. "No, you're not quitting. We need you." Her voice echoed off the walls. Karen looked terrified. My coworkers stared at me the way people stare at someone walking away from a burning building. Part shock, part admiration, part disbelief. Then Melissa switched tactics. Panic now replacing anger. "Cindy, please, just stay until the end of the quarter. I'll talk to corporate. I'll get you a raise. Just don't do this." It was almost funny. For 10 years, she never cared. For 10 years, she dismissed me. For 10 years, I was invisible. Until the moment I walked away. "I've already been underpaid for a decade," I said softly. "I'm not giving you another minute." I turned toward the door, and that's when she screamed the words that sealed everything. "If you walk out now, I'll make sure no company ever hires you again." I stopped, slowly turned back, for the first time in 10 years. She looked small. I smiled, not out of kindness, but clarity. "Good luck with that," I said, "because you're going to be a lot busier than you think." I didn't explain. Not yet. But Melissa had no idea what was already in motion. Her voice followed me as I walked out of the conference room and straight toward the exit. "Cindy, get back here. I am not done with you." But I was done. With her, with the company, with being undervalued and overlooked. As the elevator doors closed, my pulse finally slowed, and a strange, overwhelming peace settled over me. For the first time in a decade, I chose myself. And Melissa? She hadn't even begun to realize what walking away really meant. Because the moment I stepped outside, the storm didn't end. It finally began. The moment the elevator doors shut, I expected relief. Freedom. Triumph. Instead, I felt nothing. My hands were shaking. My breath shallow. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like falling. For 10 years, that building was my life. My routine. My stability. My identity. Walking away wasn't just quitting a job. It was stepping into a future I hadn't prepared for. The parking lot looked the same as every morning, and every late night I dragged myself home. My old dented Honda sat exactly where I'd left it, but everything felt different, like the world had shifted without making a sound. I sat in the driver's seat and just stared through the windshield. What have I done? The question echoed in my head. I wasn't impulsive. I wasn't reckless. I was the reliable one. The one who showed up early, stayed late, fixed mistakes no one else noticed. But today, for the first time, I chose myself, and it terrified me. As I drove home, my phone buzzed nonstop. 10 missed calls, 4 voicemails, 3 texts from an unknown number. I didn't need to check to know who it was. When I got home, the silence hit me harder than Melissa's yelling. No spreadsheets waiting. No late emails from upper management. No workload looming over me. Just quiet. I changed into sweatpants and sat on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen. For the first time in a long time, I let myself feel everything. Anger, fear, exhaustion. Then the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, it was my coworker and closest friend there, Lena. Coffee in one hand, grocery bag in the other. I figured you'd either be crying, drinking, or staring at a wall. I came prepared for all 3. I let out a laugh I didn't know I still had in me, and she stepped inside. So, you really did it? She asked gently as she put the groceries down. I really did. She whistled softly. Melissa is losing her mind. HR is in meltdown. Karen is crying in the bathroom because she doesn't know how to open the quarterly forecast system. I couldn't help it. I laughed again. The mental image was too perfect. But then Lena looked at me more seriously. Are you okay? I hesitated. I don't know. She nodded. Then let's start with food. We sat at my kitchen counter, sharing pasta salad from the bag and drinking coffee. The normalcy felt strange, but comforting. I need to tell you something, she said finally. Something I probably should have told you months ago. Her voice had changed. I put my fork down. Go on. She took a breath. Melissa never intended to promote you. The board approved budget for a senior role 3 years ago. You were the only candidate HR recommended, but Melissa blocked it every time. My stomach tightened. Why? She told them, and I quote, Cindy isn't leadership material, she's a workhorse. I felt the words like a punch. A workhorse. Not valued, not respected, just used. And Karen? I asked. She'd been planning that hire for months. She told some of the executive team that Karen had God-given leadership potential and that she was meant to guide the department. HR pushed back. Karen failed every technical skills requirement, but Melissa forced it through. I blinked, stunned. So that's it, I whispered. 10 years, and I was never anything more than a placeholder. Lena reached over and squeezed my hand. You were the backbone of that department, Cindy. Everyone knows it except the one person who didn't want to. I stared at the tabletop, anger simmering deep inside. Not explosive, but controlled, focused. What are you going to do now? She asked. The truth was, I didn't know. I'd never allowed myself to imagine anything beyond that company. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail notification. Please tell me that's not Melissa again. Lena groaned, but the name on the screen made me sit up straighter. Unknown number, voicemail transcription. Hello, Cindy. My name is Daniel Reed. I'm with Corporate Compliance. We need to speak with you regarding recent events. My pulse kicked up. Compliance didn't call unless something was serious, and Melissa screaming after me in that conference room wasn't the only thing she'd regret. Because I had documentation, emails, project files, messages proving I'd been doing the work she refused to hire for. Proof of mismanagement. Proof of favoritism. Proof they ignored. Until now. Lena looked at me slowly. What are you thinking? I swallowed hard. I'm thinking quitting wasn't the end. My voice felt steady, certain. It might be the beginning. I waited 2 hours before calling compliance back. Not because I was hesitant, but because I needed to think and calm down. My emotions were tangled: anger, fear, exhaustion, and something else I hadn't felt in years: power. After 10 years of being controlled, dismissed, and used, I finally had leverage. When I finally dialed, the line clicked after barely one ring. Cindy Miller? The voice was deep, professional. Yes, speaking. This is Daniel Reed from Corporate Compliance First. Thank you for returning my call. We received reports of a potential policy violation involving your departure. Before I proceed with formal questions, can you confirm you are no longer employed by Evergreen Solutions? Yes, I answered. I resigned this morning. There was a short pause, the kind where you can almost hear someone raise an eyebrow. I see. I'd like to schedule a formal interview with you about the circumstances surrounding your resignation. We've received several internal complaints about your former manager. Complaints, plural. My grip tightened on the phone. I understand, I said. When do you want to talk? Now, he replied. If you're available. Available as if my calendar wasn't permanently empty now. Yes, I'm available. Good. I'll send a secure link so the call can be recorded. A moment later, an email appeared with a corporate recording notice attached. I poured myself a glass of water and clicked join. Daniel appeared on screen. Late 40s, calm expression, dark suit, the kind of man who had no time for nonsense. Thank you for agreeing to this, he began. Before we start, you should know you're protected under corporate whistleblower policy. Nothing you say can be used against you professionally. Protected. A word I'd never associated with that job. He continued. We've received multiple complaints regarding favoritism, positional manipulation, and mishandling of internal promotions under your former supervisor. We also have reason to believe she may have violated internal hiring protocols. A slow breath escaped me, so I wasn't the first casualty. I'd like to hear your experience, Daniel said, starting from when you first noticed irregularities. For the first time in 10 years, somebody actually wanted the truth. So I told him, not dramatically, not vengefully, just plainly, the facts that had slowly crushed me over a decade. How I took on increasing workloads after layoffs. How promises of promotion were dangled and never delivered. How every request for evaluation or compensation was dismissed. How I was told to be patient, while the company used my loyalty like free currency. Daniel said nothing as I spoke, only jotting notes, occasionally nodding. Then I reached the part about Karen. How long was she in the office before the promotion announcement? He asked. 2 weeks. And during that time, was she performing senior-level responsibilities? I exhaled a humorless laugh. She didn't know how to open Excel. Daniel's expression finally shifted, eyebrows tightening, posture straightening. And you were instructed to train her to take over your responsibilities? Yes. And your resignation, would you say it was voluntary or forced by the circumstance? I paused, because that question hit differently. Forced resignation wasn't just words. It had legal meaning. My throat tightened slightly, but I answered anyway. I resigned because I realized my work would always be used but never valued. And because the decision to hire Karen made it clear the promotion was never based on merit. I resigned because staying meant accepting disrespect. Daniel typed for several seconds. Then he asked a question I didn't expect. Do you have documentation? Oh, I did emails, task lists, performance reviews, message threads showing I was repeatedly told the role wasn't ready yet. Spreadsheets proving workload distribution, screenshots of Karen asking basic questions. I have everything, I said quietly. More than enough. Daniel leaned back slightly, exhaling through his nose like someone who had finally confirmed a suspicion. Good, he said. Then Cindy, this may be bigger than you know. I blinked. What do you mean? Your former manager is already under preliminary review? Favoritism is one issue, but there may be misallocated training and hiring funds tied to her decisions. Your testimony and documentation could play a key role in the investigation. My heart thudded. So, what happens now? We'll need your evidence, and depending on the findings, the board may reach out. The board, not HR, not managers, not office politics, the people at the top. When the call ended, I sat still for several minutes. Everything felt unreal, like I was watching someone else's life. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from Melissa. We need to talk. Come back now or things will get very difficult for you. My fear evaporated. For once, she wasn't in control. I typed one sentence and hit send. You should worry less about me, and more about compliance. For 2 days, things went strangely quiet. No calls, no emails, no angry messages from Melissa threatening my career or begging me to return. Silence should have felt peaceful. But instead, it made every part of me tense, because silence in corporate life never meant things were fine. It meant something was happening behind closed doors. I kept thinking about that call with compliance. About the calm confidence in Daniel's voice. About the fact that for once someone actually believed me. Still, doubt crept in. What if nothing came of it? What if Melissa twisted the narrative before anyone could prove anything? What if I had just blown up my entire life for nothing? The third morning, I got my answer. At exactly 9:02 a.m., my phone rang. Not a random number this time. A number with a company caller ID Evergreen Solutions corporate board office. My stomach flipped and I answered. Hello, Cindy. This is Barbara Mallory. I'm calling on behalf of the board of directors. The chairman would like to schedule a meeting with you regarding your resignation and the ongoing investigation. A meeting with the board. Not management. Not HR. Not some mid-level compliance review. The top. Yes, I said quietly. I'm available. Good, she replied. We'd like you here today at 3 p.m. Please bring all documentation and evidence you referenced in your compliance interview. I hung up and just sat there, heart racing. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about exposing something deeply wrong. At 2:45, I walked through the revolving doors of Evergreen Solutions one last time, except this time, instead of feeling small and replaceable, I felt grounded. Solid. A security guard, not one I recognized, escorted me upstairs. That alone told me things had escalated. When I entered the conference room, half the board was already seated, including the chairman, Richard Holloway, a man known for being both fair and notoriously intolerant of internal corruption. Across the room sat Melissa, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes full of the kind of rage people get when they finally lose control. Next to her sat Karen, looking pale and stiff like she wished she could sink into the carpet. Daniel from compliance sat near the end of the table with a neatly organized binder. My binder. Cindy? Richard greeted, gesturing to an open chair. Please sit. I did. My hands were steady. My voice felt ready. Richard began. We've reviewed the initial findings from compliance, including the documentation you provided. Before we proceed, do you stand by everything you submitted? I do. He nodded slowly. Then he turned to Melissa. Melissa, you indicated to Human Resources that Cindy resigned due to emotional instability and performance decline. Do you still stand by that statement? My breath caught. That's what she told them? Melissa lifted her chin. Absolutely. She's been overwhelmed for months. I tried to support her, but she became hostile and uncooperative. Daniel slid a printed email forward. Is this your email stating that Cindy was performing the majority of operational tasks independently and was the only person capable of maintaining workflow stability? Melissa froze. Karen shifted uncomfortably. Yes or no? Richard pressed. Melissa swallowed. That email was taken out of context. Was Karen hired based on skill and qualifications? Another board member asked flatly. Melissa opened her mouth, but Karen spoke first. I didn't apply, she said quietly. Melissa asked me to take the position. I thought it was temporary. The room shifted, energy tightening. And did you know Cindy would train you? Karen hesitated. She told me it was part of her job. I didn't question it. Richard folded his hands. Cindy, please share your experience in your own words. So I did, clearly, calmly, without dramatics. I described 10 years of unpaid labor disguised as loyalty. How my workload tripled while others coasted. How promotions were promised, then blocked. How favoritism replaced merit. How my resignation wasn't a choice. It was the only way to protect myself. When I finished, the room was silent. Finally, Richard spoke. Thank you. You may step outside while we deliberate. As I stood, Melissa hissed under her breath. You'll regret this. For the first time, I met her stare directly. No, I said quietly. The only thing I regret is letting you get away with it for so long. I stepped out, closed the door, and exhaled. Shaky but proud. Whatever happened next, one thing was finally true. I wasn't powerless anymore. The wait outside that boardroom felt longer than the 10 years I'd spent at that company. I paced the hallway, replaying every detail of my testimony. Part of me feared I'd gone too far. Another part of me knew I hadn't gone far enough. At minute 20, the door finally opened. The security guard nodded at me. They're ready for you. My chest tightened, but I walked inside. Everyone was seated again. Melissa's face was flushed, her composure cracked. Karen looked like she might cry. Daniel's expression remained neutral, but there was a slight nod, like, whatever happens next, you did your part. Richard gestured to the chair. Cindy, thank you for your patience. We've reached a decision. I sat, spine straight, hands clasped tightly in my lap. Richard continued. After reviewing statements, documentation, and recorded performance history, the board has concluded that your resignation was not voluntary, but the result of ongoing retaliation, role mismanagement, and a breach of internal policy. My breath hitched. The words felt surreal. Richard turned to Melissa. Effective immediately, Melissa Grant. Your employment with Evergreen Solutions is terminated. Additionally, internal audit will conduct a full review of all hiring decisions, expense authorizations, and promotion overrides executed under your authority. Melissa shot up from her chair. You can't be serious. I'm the best manager this department has had. Richard's voice stayed calm. No, you were the most disruptive. Security escorted her out while she shouted threats, accusations, and finally, silence. When the doors closed behind her, Karen sank lower in her chair, eyes glassy. Karen, Richard addressed her next. Your role was acquired through improper hiring channels. You will not be continuing in your position. However, he added gently, you are not being accused of wrongdoing. Someone exploited your trust. We suggest you seek proper training or employment elsewhere. She nodded shakily, whispering, I understand. Then Richard turned back to me. Cindy, he said, voice softening. You gave this company a decade of dedication we did not properly recognize. That ends today. I blinked, unsure I'd heard him correctly. We would like to offer you the position of Senior Operations Manager, effective immediately, with full back pay for the wage difference between that title and your previous salary for the last 3 years. Additionally, we are implementing new policy measures, anonymous reporting, workload audits, and multi-party hiring approval, based on your recommendations and testimony. For a second, I couldn't speak. My throat tightened, eyes burning. It wasn't just the offer. It was the acknowledgement, the validation, the fact that someone finally saw what I had carried alone for so long. I appreciate the offer. I finally managed. But before I give an answer, I need to ask one thing. Richard nodded. Of course. If I return, will the culture actually change? Not just on paper, but But in reality, the room went quiet. Then Richard leaned forward. Cindy, the moment you walked out, we realized how much the company depended on your integrity, not just your labor. Leadership does not want to lose another employee like you, nor repeat the mistake that led to this meeting. I let out a slow breath. Then yes, I said finally, I'll accept. Relief moved through the room like a quiet ripple. Daniel closed his binder, a faint smile appearing for the first time. Good, because Evergreen needs leaders, not placeholders. 3 months later, everything felt different. Employees spoke up. Processes were fair. Workload distribution became transparent. People who once avoided eye contact now stopped me in hallways to say thank you. And Karen? I later heard she enrolled in community college to learn business administration. For the first time, she wanted to earn a position, not inherit one. The biggest shift, though, happened inside me. For years, I believed loyalty meant endurance, silence, sacrifice. But leaving, speaking up, showed me something else. Loyalty doesn't mean letting yourself be walked on. Respect isn't earned by being quiet. And sometimes the biggest change begins the moment you finally say, enough. Now, when new employees join, I tell them, your value isn't measured by how much you can tolerate, it's measured by what you refuse to. Because standing up for yourself isn't unprofessional, it's necessary.